Hello and greetings to everyone. Something absolutely impossible is happening right now. This is really concerning. Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb just published calculations that do not make sense. The interstellar object 3I, Atlas, has mass 5 times greater than all calculations predicted. 5 times. Its surface area is 16 times too small for the material being ejected from it. 16 times too small. It either fragmented into pieces, but look, it is still intact. Or this is something else entirely. Maybe technology with ion drives. On October 21st, 2025, 3I Atlas lined up with the Sun and Earth. Boom. Within 48 hours, Earth got hit. Double strike of X-class solar flares directly at our planet. Japan answered immediately. 22 earthquakes magnitude 5+ in just 72 hours. 3 big ones, magnitude 6+. This is an exact copy of what happened before the Great Tohoku earthquake. March 11th, 2011. Magnitude 9.1. In the next 25 minutes, this video will show you how this cosmic object is triggering a chain reaction from the Sun to Japanese fault lines. So let us dive into this. So let us look at the numbers because they really do not lie here. Dr. Avi Loeb from Harvard calculated the energy requirements for 3I Atlas. Look at this. To supply 5 billion tons of carbon dioxide during its perihelion passage, write 3I Atlas must receive at least 3 times 10 to the power 18 joules. That is a huge amount of energy. Now at perihelion distance, the Sun provides 700 joules per square meter per second. So if the math is done here, this means the absorbing area of 3I Atlas must exceed 1,600 square kilometers. Okay? That is the area of a sphere with diameter 23 kilometers. 4 times larger than the maximum diameter of 5.6 kilometers obtained from Hubble Space Telescope imaging. Houston, we have a problem with the natural comet hypothesis. A big problem. Check this out. The required surface area for 3I Atlas is at least 16 times greater than the upper limit obtained from the Hubble image. That image was taken on July 21, 2025. When Webb telescope captured data on August 6, 2025, 3I Atlas was losing only 150 kilograms per second. Only 150. But the mass loss at perihelion being calculated above is 4 orders of magnitude greater. 4 orders of magnitude. Approximately 2 million kilograms per second. This is a significant increase, right? This requires a power law dependence of mass loss on distance from the Sun with an index of negative 10.5. That is extreme. So does the sharp mass loss and brightness increase of 3I Atlas at perihelion indicate its disintegration? Well, fragmentation should increase the surface area of its material. Since the surface-to-mass ratio is inversely proportional to the characteristic radius of fragments, a minimum 16 times increase in surface area requires 3I Atlas to fragment into at least 16 equal parts. Probably much more. This would mean 3I Atlas exploded at perihelion. We are observing the resulting fireworks right now. But here is the twist. If upcoming observations show that 3I Atlas was not destroyed by the Sun and maintained its integrity as a single body, then this must be considered as something other than a natural comet. On December 19, 2025, 3I Atlas will approach Earth at maximum close distance. Ground-based telescopes, as well as Hubble and Webb, will verify its integrity. So we will know soon. Separately from the necessary fragmentation for a natural comet, the large diameter of 3I Atlas highlights another anomaly. Look at this. The estimated mass of 3I Atlas is more than 1 million times greater than the estimated mass of one Oumuamua, 1 million times. Why did we discover such a giant object before witnessing a million objects the size of one Oumuamua? There is insufficient rocky material in interstellar space to provide delivery of such a giant icy rock into the inner solar system during our decade-long survey period. An object with diameter greater than 10 kilometers should be delivered to our vicinity once every 10,000 years or longer. The probability of this anomaly is less than 0.1% if all rocks are packed into large bodies the size of 3 Atlas, or less than 0.0005% if the total mass in logarithmic mass interval packing is the same. Add to this the 0.2% probability that the retrograde trajectory of 3 Atlas coincides with the ecliptic plane within 5 degrees. You get one chance in 100 million that 3 Atlas has a familiar astrophysical origin. 1 in 100 million. Now, check this out. Technological engines require much less mass loss to create the observed jets around 3 Atlas. Chemical rockets are propelled by exhaust velocity 3 to 5 kilometers per second. That is 10 times the maximum ejection velocity of volatiles sublimated by sunlight from comet surfaces. 10 times. Ion drives achieve even higher exhaust velocity, 10 to 50 kilometers per second. Engines created using alien technology may use even higher exhaust velocity. This would reduce the required mass loss by several orders of magnitude. It would make fuel consumption negligible compared to spacecraft mass. But this is only the beginning of the cosmic chain. Only the beginning. On October 21, 2025, 3 Atlas performed superior conjunction. Sun, 3 Atlas, Earth in a straight line. Within 48 hours, something incredible happened. A massive sunspot that had been silent for weeks suddenly erupted. Boom! 2 X-class solar flares launched directly at Earth. The first was magnitude 1.7 X-class. The second was magnitude 1.2 X-class. Both launched full halo coronal mass ejections. Direct hits on our planet. Look at the timing here. The sunspot formed on the Earth-facing side about a month earlier in mid-October. It was not doing anything significant. Not really. The moment the alignment with 3 Atlas happened, the superior conjunction on the 21st, boom. Big solar storms started launching from it. It rotated all the way through after having a huge period of solar activity. That has continued now with multiple X-class flares, high M-class flares. It has not stopped. There is a very strong connection in time between all these things. You cannot just keep stacking coincidences up and say they are coincidence. If you get a tall enough tower, that just cannot be coincidence anymore. There is something to this. There is a tower here that is like a Jenga tower going up to the Empire State Building. Really. The 1.7 X-class flare on November 9th launched a coronal mass ejection toward Earth. The 1.2 X-class flare, just hours later, launched an even bigger coronal mass ejection. Even bigger. That one triggered an S1 proton radiation storm, high-energy particles flowing in from the solar wind, charging up the ionosphere, especially in the polar regions. The auroral circuit is getting supercharged right now. Those electric currents bleed out to the equator and to lower latitude regions on our planet. Now add the electromagnetic factor into the equation. This is where it gets really interesting. These solar flares charge up the global electric circuit by blasting Earth with high-frequency light radiation. Extreme ultraviolet light, X-ray light. The same sort of X-rays you receive at the doctor's office. The doctor says it is fine, but then they hide behind the wall, right? Same frequency of light, except a huge, massive amount of it. Light travels in a straight line, unaffected by electromagnetic fields. It creates these electromagnetic fields, and hits Earth 8.3 minutes later. Charges up the atmosphere where it hits by causing molecules to break apart. Ionization. That is why there is an ionosphere, the uppermost part of our atmosphere. This creates really strong electric currents. Really strong. If a coronal mass ejection launches, those take longer to reach Earth. About 24, 48, 72 hours, depending on velocity. Both of these coronal mass ejections are expected to come in on November 12th. The global electric circuit is already getting charged up. There has been some long-duration geomagnetic storming. A pretty big impact is coming in. Minimum G3 levels expected. That would be a strong geomagnetic storm. It could even get to severe levels, G4 storming. This brings into question issues with power grids, satellites, radio communication. One of the reasons why that happens is because of really strong geomagnetically induced currents. GIC currents created by ionization of the ionosphere. That is how the global electric circuit charges. Electric currents flow in the upper atmosphere and induce currents to flow in the ground surface or anything conductive. In the case of transmission lines, yes. But in the case of earthquakes, it is the actual Earth itself hosting these really powerful electric currents which can cause a fault to rupture. There is quite a bit of evidence for that. So now there have been two big X-class flares exactly from Earth, direct with solar storms coming in. Proton flux at greater than 10 mega-electron-volt levels increased to over the S1 threshold. Normal values are about 0.15 to 2. Now it is at 22. That is a 100 times increase in the amount of energetic particles coming in that are 10 mega-electron volts or greater in their energy. 100 times. Japan answered, immediately. Immediately. Look at what has been happening in Japan. This is really concerning. This is set for November 8th, going all the way up to now. There is a magnitude 5.2, magnitude 7.4, magnitude 6. Here is a magnitude 6 that occurred within a few hours. If you go further down, there is a magnitude 6.4. Here is a magnitude 6.4 that occurred yesterday, and a magnitude 6.8 that occurred yesterday. During that time frame, those two big X-class flares happened. The 1.7 and the 1.2, both launching solar storms our way. This magnitude 1.2 X-class flare from today triggered an S1 proton radiation storm. So there are already high-energy particles flowing in from the solar wind from that explosion, charging up the ionosphere. The auroral circuit and everything is really getting supercharged right now. Those electric currents bleed out to the equator and lower latitude regions. So there is an S1 proton radiation storm, multiple solar storm impacts coming in, really significant planetary alignment coming up November 19th and 20th. And there is this earthquake swarm, which is extremely reminiscent of what occurred directly before the magnitude 9.1 Great Tohoku earthquake, March 11th of 2011. That was at 5:46 a.m. That was defined primarily by a magnitude 7.3 foreshock, but also a ton of other things like this. The magnitude 5s have been counted. When counted, there have been 22 magnitude 5 earthquakes or greater in this location. 22. That is not accounting for the magnitude 6s. So 3 magnitude 6 earthquakes now, a 6.8, 6.4, and 6. 22 magnitude 5 or greater, so 5 to 5.9. Then tons of 4s, even more 3s, even more 2s. This is exceptionally anomalous and not normal. This is very much indicative of this being a foreshock sequence to something big, something really big. Probably not just a magnitude 7 something. If there is a magnitude 7.5, that is probably still part of the foreshock. This really is looking like a megaquake, earthquake, foreshock sequence where magnitude 8 or greater, Great Tohoku earthquake, magnitude 9.1. This is really significant. The hope is the forecast is wrong, but that is probably actually the most likely outcome. If percentages had to be assigned, there is more than 50% chance right now of this being something heralding, something really big coming to Japan. More than 50%. The Great Tohoku earthquake, that epicenter was right there. This entire area for the months afterwards experienced extreme seismic activity. It is almost in the exact same location, super close to the coast of Japan. These earthquakes are shallow in depth, 10, 10, 11.2 kilometers. You need a shallow big earthquake to create a significant tsunami. If this was a magnitude 8 earthquake that occurs at 300 kilometers of depth, there would not be a tsunami from that. It is too deep. But if it happens really close to the surface, that allows the geological layers to slip and break. Either uplift or downlift happens. That pushes the water to create that tsunami wave. Because it is happening so close to the coast, it is going to hit almost instantly if it does. Almost instantly. This is really looking significant. This magnitude 6 that came in today only further strengthens that forecast. This is already looking pretty troubling. Magnitude 5 seconds continue. Now there is this magnitude 6. Yes, it is right now going 6.8, 6.4, and 6. There is a decay function to this. But typically, it is one order of magnitude less for aftershocks. A 6.8 being the big earthquake would mean the highest aftershock typically would be magnitude 5.8, 5.9, or 6. But this is a 6.8, 6.4, and 6 with 22 or more magnitude 5 earthquakes. They keep popping off. It is like a magnitude 4 plus every hour or so, sometimes even greater than that. There is such a huge number of these magnitude 5 seconds. That is very anomalous. Very anomalous. Thank you for being with us. Please subscribe, share, and like. Mercury activates the alignment in 9 days. 9 days. If you look at the display view of the solar system, this is set for today. There is Earth, the Moon, Mercury, the Sunday behind Earth. There is Uranus. This is approaching the annual Uranus opposition, where it is Sun, Earth, Uranus. Look what happens if you just zoom forward a little. Drag this right to about the 19th, 20th of November. Look at that. All of a sudden, there is the Sun, Mercury, Moon, Earth, and Uranus in a line. In a line. People have been doing research on this for a long time. One notable researcher, his name is J.H. Nelson. He was really looking into planetary alignments as it affected solar activity, sunspot formation, geomagnetic storming, and radio frequency communication back in the 1,930 seconds, 1,940 seconds, 1,950 seconds, 1,960 seconds, 1,970 seconds. Back then, they did not have a lot of the space weather tools available now. He was working for RCA. They said you need to figure out some way to be able to forecast when disturbances could happen. He took it upon himself and noticed very strong correlations between planetary alignments, sunspot activity, solar flares, and geomagnetic storming. He wrote a book on this called Cosmic Patterns. It is a short read. The methodology has been applied to successfully forecast solar activity and geomagnetic storming. Enhanced Earth events also tend to happen around planetary alignments because of electromagnetic gravitational forces and perhaps even more like morphic resonance forces at play. Right here on the 19th and 20th, this is the new moon. There is the Uranus opposition. This is a Mercury retrograde because Mercury went retrograde on the 9th from the perspective of Earth. Mercury is now moving backwards. The inferior conjunction of Mercury happens on the 19th, 20th of November. New moon, inferior conjunction of Mercury and Uranus opposition all together, boom, on the 19th and 20th. This is looking very dynamic. Very dynamic. This is building. This is also in a harmonic configuration, a 60-degree sextile to Saturn-Neptune, getting closer and closer to their great conjunction that is coming up. This is a 60-degree angle there. Notice that Pluto is also in this 60-degree angle to Saturn-Neptune. That means Pluto is 120 degrees trine to this alignment here. Nelson identified Mercury as being the activator of these alignments because of its fastest orbital velocity around the Sun, and also because of its proximity to the Sunday. It seems that when Mercury sweeps in, that is when these alignments get activated. Significant events unfold. That is a factor that puts emphasis on everything. Each sunspot is a concentration of magnetic flux on the Sunday. The magnetic field strength here is on the order of thousands of Gauss, whereas Earth's magnetic field, for reference, is 0.23 to 0.67 Gauss, roughly. Thousands of Gauss. They form these twisting magnetic vortices. There is this massive sunspot, many times the size of Earth, directly in front of Earth with its magnetic field. Electromagnetism, 10 to the power 36 times more powerful than gravity. That is also twisting and churning everything. The interplanetary magnetic field in between, the electric field, everything is being topsy-turvy, turned around, churned up, twisted, and fluxed as a result of this. Now, return to that fateful date, March 9th, 2011. Return to that date. One other thing that is interesting to note is before the Great Tohoku earthquake, on the 9th, there was a 2.2 X-class flare. Yesterday is when the magnitude 6.8 and 6.4 earthquakes happened in Japan. That is when the 1.7 X-class flare happened. They are nearly exactly identical. That 2.2 X-class flare on March 9th, 2011 was exactly from Earth direct. Really wild synchronicities occurring right now. Really wild. There is also some more. Here is the astrological chart for the Great Tohoku earthquake. The position of the planets and their relation to each other in the sky needs to be seen. The moon is right there at 0 degrees, the cusp of Gemini and Taurus. That is exactly where the moon was when that earthquake ruptured. It was at the very end of Taurus, beginning of Gemini. Notice also there is Mercury and Uranus less than 3 degrees conjunct. Mercury and Uranus there, nearly conjunct, and the moon at that location. If you go to the true sky map and switch this back to tropical, this is set for the new moon when there is this planetary alignment. Look at where Uranus is. It is at the cusp of Taurus and Gemini. Where the moon was for the Great Tohoku earthquake, now is where Uranus is. It is in opposition with Mercury. The moon is in opposition. This is a moon opposition to that Great Tohoku earthquake moon location. Now the moon is on that point, Earth. The moon being related to tidal forces, being related to the people, being related to earthquakes. Earthquakes vary with the lunar cycle. Mercury is here now in this opposition to Uranus. It is really quite striking, the synchronicity and the exact alignments between these. If you switch this back to the true sky position, which is the actual constellations in the sky, the Sun, Moon, and Mercury are all less than 1 degree apart. Actually, it is only like 15 arc minutes apart from each other. Uranus there is less than 2 degrees off from that. Nearly exact alignment here. This is set for Tokyo, Japan, at the exact time of this alignment. This is the alignment there. Look at this configuration also happening. This right here is trine to Jupiter, which is trine to Saturn and Neptune. There is this harmonic trine configuration. Here are those sextile configurations there. Jupiter is in a fairly close opposition to Pluto. It is within 10 degrees. It is at like 6 degrees off. That is marked as an opposition. There is this really incredible planetary geometry coming into effect on November 19th and 20th, Mercury being the activator. It is going to sweep through like this. Sweep through. The antipodal connection explains the entire picture. The entire picture. Kamchatka is the site of the greatest earthquake this year. The sixth strongest ever observed with modern seismic gear. A magnitude 8.8 megaquake. There has been a ton of magnitude 7 seconds, 6 seconds, and 5 seconds here. It is still swarming effectively, although that has died off a little bit just in the past few days. All the seismic energy release has been loading this zone. There is the fault rupture, or faults rupture. There is this actual displacement wave. A seismic wave is a sound wave. The particles are either compressing together, or they are shearing, or there is this rolling surface wave motion that is actually loading energy into molecular structures and into fault zones. When there is a rupture on a fault, with the magnitude 8.8, it was like nearly this entire section ruptured. That makes sense because it is a big earthquake, sixth largest ever observed. There was a magnitude 9 here in 1952. So 1952, magnitude 9. 2025, magnitude 8.8. This area gets ruptured. These zones go into earthquake shadow because they also have a lot of stress taken off of them. The areas outside that earthquake shadow actually get loaded with energy. This area has been loaded with a ton of energy since July, when this earthquake activity started. That magnitude 8.8 being July 29th, that was forecasted on multiple channels 3 days in advance. Overall, global earthquake trends were being looked at paired with space weather. There is really strong connection between them based on research. Based on research. 3 days before this occurred, the magnitude 8.8, a video was released examining the highest risk seismic zones for the near future. This was the first zone identified because it was the highest risk of all of them. It was specifically said it is possible to get a magnitude 8.5 or greater there in the near future. Then 3 days later, the 29th of July, it happened. Accurate earthquake forecasting has been done by looking at all these factors. The actual earthquake activity is really important. Then you add in the space weather and solar factors and the planetary alignments, you really get some pretty incredible results. Pretty incredible. There is also an antipodal action happening. One of the new developments, the antipode, the exact opposite side of the globe for Kamchatka, is right about in the Scotia Sea. There have been a lot of earthquakes in the Scotia Sea. Magnitude 7 seconds, a 7.3, 7.4, 7.5. They have been going back and forth. It has been a reciprocal, almost like ping-pong, ping-pong, ping-pong with these earthquakes. Ping-pong. If you look, Kamchatka is not that far from Japan, which means that its antipode is in pretty much the same location. Its antipode is more about over in this zone. The two areas of greatest seismic energy release thus far in 2025, which would be Kamchatka and the Scotia Sea, are nearly exactly antipodal. What is happening with Japan right now is not that far off of it. This is not like Papua New Guinea or something. This is really close to Kamchatka. Its antipode is pretty much in the same location. There is some larger force factor at play here related to probably the core and the mantle, and at that core mantle boundary. Going up to the surface, that is, influencing this axis of seismic activity through Earth itself, from here to there. That is another reason why something really big could happen here. This is right in that zone. It has been loaded with all that energy. These solar storm impacts are coming in. One other connection exists. Comet C 2025 T1 Atlas brightened 250 times. 250 times. It was originally down at apparent magnitude of about -16 or so. Now it is around 10 to 9.12. This comet is exactly aligned with Earth and Sun at this moment in time. That coronal mass ejection launched out in that direction before the big full halo. This brightened 250 times. It is receiving some amount of energy from the Sunday. Its perihelion is on December 2nd. That is a distance of 1.1 astronomical units. As it gets closer in, it is going to be receiving more solar radiation. These are light photons. It is also getting some of these solar storms launched towards it clearly. Increasing in brightness 250 times means it is now more of a plasma body than it was before. It has been ionized to a good degree. It has been releasing gas and dust that ionizes in interplanetary space. As a result, it forms a very strong electromagnetic field around it. Electromagnetism being so much stronger of a force than gravity, the gravitational significance and influence between the two of these is very minor, especially a comet. It has almost no gravity. But that is the thing. Because that is so low gravity, it can really expand out this cloud of gas, dust, and plasma around it, which then can be very powerful as a force in relation to the Sun in the overall interplanetary space and field. Typically, there is nothing there. All of a sudden, you drop effectively a big magnet there. There is this field of potentials. Then you drop a big magnet in a place that normally does not have one. It is going to affect things. Electromagnetism, 10 to the 36 times more powerful than gravity. That is so many zeros. It is a huge amount. So much more powerful than gravity. Gravity is not irrelevant, but electromagnetism is the dominant guiding force in most things. Gravity is not irrelevant, but it is not as important. It is not the only thing. A lot of mainstream science only thinks about gravity ever. They never think really about electromagnetism and some of these aspects. More and more people are coming online with this understanding of plasma cosmology. It is both. It is not one or the other. 3I. Atlas is still very close into the Sunday. It is still well within the orbit of Mars. It is going to leave this inner solar system, if this is being defined by the orbit of Mars, very end of November. Then it starts its long journey to Jupiter, unless it does something bizarre and unexpected. Right now, it is growing that tail, looking at its slightly off angle. That tail is mostly pointed away from Earth. Keep in mind, this tail is stretched out actually kind of at that angle. It is not being seen perfectly laterally. This is actually quite a bit of a longer tail than a lot of people think. In a few weeks, if this tail remains, it is going to be quite long. That means there is a lot of off-gassing here. It clearly has a lot of volatiles to it. That means they are volatilizing very quickly. Ice going straight to gas at hypersonic speeds, carrying dust with it. This is creating a very large plasma field around it, just like with the other comets in the solar system. That is interacting with Earth from a different angle than the one just shown with T1 Atlas. But the thing with 3I Atlas is that it is along the ecliptic plane. It is right there in the solar wind, in the electric current inward flowing of interplanetary space. It has been seen really clearly how it has been influencing solar activity. At least that argument can be made. These big sunspots right now formed on the Earth-facing side. This one formed on the Earth-facing side more about a month ago now. It rotated off, but it did not do anything on Earth facing a month ago. Not really. The moment the alignment with 3I Atlas happened, the superior conjunction 3I Atlas on Earth on the 21st. Boom. Big solar storms started launching off from this one. It rotated all the way through after having a huge period of solar activity. That has continued now with multiple X-class flares, high M-class flares. It has not stopped. There is a very strong connection in time between all these things. You cannot just keep stacking coincidences up and say that they are coincidence. If you get a tall enough tower, It is like that just cannot be coincidence anymore. There is something to this. There is a tower here that is like a Jenga tower going up to the Empire State Building. It is crazy. This has been tracked for a while now. They just keep lining up. Forecasting has been done on this. Enhanced solar activity was forecast due to the superior conjunction of 3 I Atlas through the perihelion back in July, just a few days before that magnitude 8.8 megaquake. 2.5 months later, that is what happened. Now it is continuing. Now it is Earth-facing. Now really anomalous activity is being seen off the coast of Japan. More solar storm impacts. The probability exceeds 50%. Here is the mathematics. Here is the mathematics. If you look at the earthquake map from USGS, there is a very high likelihood now of there being a magnitude 8 or greater earthquake in Japan in the next 10 days. If the time frame is widened because it is not known when something is going to happen, or if it is going to happen, keep that in mind. Nothing could happen beyond what has happened. But for the rest of this month, because that planetary geometry has a bit of a window on it, this could happen even sooner than that. This could happen within hours or days. Making these sort of forecasts is not comfortable, but this is the sort of activity seen before something really big happens. All the factors are aligning. Here is what has been happening in Japan. If this is set for earthquakes on the map, there is a 5.2, 7.4, 6. Here is this magnitude 6 that just occurred within a few hours. If you go further down, there is a 6.4. Here is a 6.4 that occurred yesterday and a 6.8 that occurred yesterday. During that time frame, those two big X-class flares happened. The 1.7 and the 1.2, both of them launching solar storms our way. This 1.2 X-class flare from today triggered an S1 proton radiation storm. So there are already high-energy particles flowing in from the solar wind from that explosion, charging up the ionosphere, especially in the polar regions. The auroral circuit and everything is really getting supercharged right now. Those electric currents bleed out to the equator and to the lower latitude regions on our planet. So there is an S1 proton radiation storm. Multiple solar storm impacts coming in. Really significant planetary alignment coming up November 19th and 20th. There is this earthquake swarm which is extremely reminiscent of what occurred directly before the magnitude 9. One great Tohoku earthquake, March 11th of 2011. This is exceptionally anomalous and not normal. This is very much indicative of this being a foreshock sequence to something big. Probably not just a magnitude 7 something. This really is looking like a megaquake, earthquake foreshock sequence where magnitude 8 or greater. If a list had to be created and put them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this would be number 1. It would be number 1 by far. Does that mean it is going to be the location where the next big earthquake happens? Maybe not. Maybe the next magnitude 7 or greater is somewhere else. But if a list had to be created, this would be number 1. Number 1 by far. The hope is that nothing happens. It just really cannot be known for sure. The other thing is that this magnitude 6 that came in today only further strengthens that forecast. This is already looking pretty troubling. Magnitude 5 seconds continue. Now, there is this magnitude 6. This is a 6.8, 6.4, and 6 with 22 or more magnitude 5 earthquakes. They keep popping off. Everything is looking prime for there to be something big to happen as it relates to a geologic event. That is why Japan is looking so troubling. It is showing exactly the sort of seismic activity that is necessary for there to be a big earthquake. That is the zone of highest seismic risk. If a forecast had to be given, this right now, by far, is the zone of highest seismic risk on the planet. By far. All these factors converging. Solar storm impacts, Planetary alignment, November 19th and 20th. Mercury activating. The earthquake swarm identical to 2011. The antipodal connection loading energy. The electromagnetic currents charging the global circuit. Comet C, 2025 T1, brightening 250 times. 3. I Atlas, defying physics. Its mass 5 times greater than calculations. Surface area 16 times too small. Either it fragmented but remains whole, or this is technology. The cosmic chain is active. From interstellar object to Sun to Earth to Japanese faults, the probability exceeds 50%. This is not prediction. This is probability based on converging factors. Magnitude 8 or greater in the next 10 days. Maybe hours, maybe days. The hope is this forecast is wrong, but the numbers and patterns say otherwise. Thank you for being with us. Please subscribe, share, and like.